Hey everyone, this is Future Matt, or the Matt that's done editing this video. I didn't realize how much I was yapping about just nonsense. So if you aren't interested at all in the nerdy audio engineering or Warhammer stuff, just skip ahead to the end of the video for the result of this creative thing that I did. And I hope you really enjoy it. And sorry for talking your ear off. Hey everyone, it's been a while. And I'm sorry, but I'm here now. So let's talk about stuff and things. Let's just hang out, right? I haven't done a Waffle Wednesday in a long time, like a really long time. And I'm sorry about that. It's just hard for me to make YouTube videos. It really is. I have an issue with being like vulnerable on the internet. I have issues talking about like my motivation, and I'm worried that I'm gonna like leak my motivation and not get things done that I want to get done. And on top of that, I've just been busy. I have been dealing with the end of season, and I think as of right now I am coming to the end of my AV season. This will be my second season doing this, and now I have 3 months of time to just sit here and contemplate why the hell I didn't save more money to get me through this slow season. Shit. But there is one good thing that's coming out of having a lot more free time on my plate now, and that's I get to be creative. I get to do fun stuff. I get to hone my craft of working in audio and doing sound design, doing music production, and working on a bunch of different projects. And I do have some projects coming up that I'm not going to tell you about. I'm so sorry, but back to the whole motivation leak thing, right? But I do want to share some progress that I have with you guys here today. It does require a little bit of backstory though, so let me backtrack just a little bit here. So for those who don't know, I am a big raging fan of Warhammer. Everything Warhammer. I have a Chaos Star tattoo. I love everything about the lore of 40K and Sigmar and all of these little, sub games of the Warhammer franchise. And if you don't know what Warhammer is, essentially it's a tabletop war game, strategy war game, where you put two armies together and you duke it out and see who wins. It's really, really nerdy, and I fucking love it. And I'm not apologizing anymore for loving nerdy shit, because loving nerdy shit is part of my identity, and I love that shit. Anyway, I digress. So typically in Warhammer, it's like pitched battles. So what that means is you put your army on the table, your opponent puts their army on the table, you choose what objectives you're going to fight for, you do the game, and then it's over, right? There's not really anything else in the game, except there's this one concept called a... Why am I blanking on what it is? Do I have to go grab my rule book in the middle of me making this video to go find out what this thing is called? I have to go grab my rule book in the middle of me making this video to find out what it's called! Is it in the Slaves to Darkness book? Why would it be in the Slaves to Darkness book? It's not going to be in the Slaves to Darkness book. It's going to be in the core rule book. What is it? Core rules, advanced rules, battle packs, matched play, Path to Glory! That's what it's called. It's called Path to Glory. Okay. That was a lot. I'm sorry. Just stay with me here. I know, we'll get through this together. So Path to Glory is kind of like a solo RPG element to the game, where you essentially pick like a commander and you are completing quests and you're ascending to become like a champion of your army, like an exalted ruler of your champion, or of your army, sorry. I've never really tried it, but when the idea was first pitched a long time ago, back in 2nd edition, and for reference, we're in 4th edition of Age of Sigmar right now, You usually get a new edition every like 2 to 3 years, something like that. So it's been a while, right? I didn't really know much about it, and I just decided, well, now wait a minute, why can't you just make some sort of like a narrative campaign with Warhammer? And without doing any research at all into if anyone else has done this or how I would even get started with it, I started just writing. I started just doing what I do best, which is creating things from the top of my head. So that's exactly what I did. As soon as I started getting more involved with it and putting in like these last minute details and getting everything like really nice and polished, all of a sudden, like all of my friends stopped playing Warhammer. And I was just like, fuck my drag. Years passed and I didn't really play like any Warhammer at all. I didn't do anything like super nerdy and decided to scrap that project until recently I got back into Warhammer with the launch of 4th edition. And there's a lot of changes to 4th edition from 2nd edition that I didn't really fully understand until after I decided to reboot and launch this narrative campaign. So I did a lot of work. And when I mean I did a lot of work, I did a lot of work. This is just like a little example, just to give you like a little idea of all of the effort that I put into this. This was before I got the official like 4th edition rule book, and I had to go back and like errata and change a bunch of stuff that I did. What you're looking at here is essentially like a DM script of what my players are going to be encountering in one part of this entire narrative campaign that I have fleshed out with lore and quests and rewards and everything for them to do. So essentially it's like D&D and Warhammer put together, and I had to do this kind of from the ground up. I didn't do any research. I didn't know how to really run a narrative campaign for Warhammer, but I wanted to do it my way. And what you're looking at here is just pages upon pages of these different quests and all of the special rules that I had to come up with and requisite points for them to be able to complete these quests, and just a lot of stuff. And this quest right here, the Lurking Abyss, you're probably wondering, why am I even showing you all this? Why am I going into this? Get to the friggin' point and just tell us why you're making this video. Well, the Lurking Abyss is the final quest in the first act of this campaign that I wrote. It's supposed to be a really, really big fight that's supposed to be brutal. It's hard. The downside to failing this quest is like really detrimental to the players. It's a big thing, the climax of the first act. And essentially what happens at the end of it, there's this guy named Archeon. He's kind of like the biggest, baddest, not necessarily the most evil, but like pretty close to being the most evil dude in Warhammer. He basically just wants to watch the world burn, and he wants to do the burning as well. He embodies like all of the deities of the Chaos Pantheon, and he just rains havoc and brings the apocalypse with him. He's kind of like a big nasty guy. He comes in at the end of this campaign, and the players think that they have to fight him, but it's actually just him coming back essentially from the dead, but not really. Let's not even get into that craziness. That's a whole different other video. And they find out that that's going to be their main antagonist that they're going to be chasing and fighting and trying to stop for the foreseeable remainder of the campaign. So why am I bringing this up? Why does all this matter? As I said, I'm a giant nerd. And I'm a giant nerd that knows how to do audio stuff. And I'm a giant nerd that really likes to do audio stuff and likes to be creative and push my limitations and figure out things from the top of my head. So I did something that I've never really done before, and I wrote an entire cinematic score for the final fight, the final meeting of Archeon at the end of Act 1. And decided to show my players it. As well as writing this cinematic score, I decided to do some voice acting. Archeon is a really nasty dude. He's evil, he's corrupted, he's the embodiment of the apocalypse, and I wanted to do some kind of like monstrous vocals with him and see what I could do as far as processing his voice. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to show you just the little snippet that I did. If you want to skip ahead, I'll put like a little timestamp here at the bottom of the video if you don't want to go into like the inner workings of the project file and see all the things that I did. All right, so I have the entire session file for the multiple iterations of the Lurking Abyss cinematic here, including the dialogue, which was tracked separately in a different session, then brought into like the final session here. And I just kind of want to go through a couple like cool things that I did, how I kind of made this, because I used a lot of tools that I've never used before, and I did some stuff that I've never done before, and implemented some things that are very unorthodox in the grand scale of things. So I started with a program called Sketch. It's like a thing inside of Pro Tools. It's made by Avid. It's kind of Avid's approach to nonlinear music generation and music production, kind of like what Ableton does, where you can just kind of make some loops, throw them into, you know, a session and create and work. And I've never used Sketch before, so it was kind of a learning curve, learning how to utilize Sketch, how to operate Contact and do MIDI within Pro Tools, which, if you know, you know, doing anything MIDI related in Pro Tools is miserable, and you shouldn't do it. This is coming from somebody who just did it. I'm telling you, don't do it. It sucks. It's miserable. Anyway, so I started with a just kind of atmospheric low end hum, which is like this little low end thing. So what that is me just holding down one note on my MIDI controller and recording it directly from the Sketch session into the Pro Tools mix session into this track here. You can see that they're labeled C sharp, D sharp. This should have been labeled F sharp and B. I picked a scale that I wanted to operate in, and I just went and created things. I'm not a great musician. I know enough about music theory, but I don't know enough about playing instruments proficiently to really be able to get the sort of atmosphere that I wanted. So I cheated. And what I did is, you can see here, I just held down a C sharp note for a stupid long amount of time, chopped it up and kind of extended it out, and then finished that. Then I went back and I recorded a D sharp, just holding my finger down on the D sharp on the MIDI controller, getting the sound through, recording it to the track, and did it for a stupid long amount of time. Did the same thing with F sharp, did the same thing with B. That was how I was going to get my scale in here. Now, what are all these little automation paths? These are the volume coming in and out and raising and lowering to give more of like a swelling atmospheric effect to what I just put into the session here, because I didn't like the sound of just going from like a C sharp to a D sharp on the MIDI. It sounded too like perfect cut for me, and I wanted these like really long swelling transitions from one note to another. So the ultimate effect sounds something like this. So you see how the tonality like changes completely there, from one note kind of just slowly going down while another note slowly comes in. the tonality changes like entirely, and it almost doesn't even sound like a recognizable note, which I thought was really, really cool. And I liked that effect so much that I painstakingly went through the entire 4-minute arrangement here, just listening over and over and over again. What note needs to be where? How fast does it come in? How loud does it come in? How quiet does it fade out? How long does it take to fade out? I figured out all that just off the top of my head, just trial and error for like hours, right? And I ended up with the low humming atmospheric like chorus for the song. But then I did something else. It wasn't as beefy as I wanted it to be. And I remember learning in one of my classes when I went to SAE from one of my instructors a trick for if you have like a bass track that just isn't low enough, it's just not giving you that oomph that you need. There's a little trick that you can do, which is just a simple sine wave synthesizer below it to kind of like give it some more low end structure. I took it a step farther and I got so ambitious here. So ambitious. I did the craziest, nerdiest stuff that I've ever done in my entire life. And I looked at all the notes that I have here: C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, B. C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, B. And I Googled, because I don't know off the top of my head, what is the fundamental frequency of a low C sharp and a low D sharp and a low F sharp and a low B? What is the fundamental frequency? When does that note start on the frequency spectrum? So I went to Audio Suite, I went to Signal Generator, I went to a sine wave, I found out whatever the fundamental frequency is, and I highlighted an entire section of a track here, and I rendered the sine wave in. Now, a sine wave is kind of boring. It's just adding the fundamental frequency back into the low end here. It's not doing anything except just like adding some more like structure to the bass, like I said earlier. It's pretty boring is what I'm trying to say. So what I decided to do was I added an infinite reverb to it. What does an infinite reverb mean? If you go to this little plugin here, this is a reverb plugin called Deverb on Pro Tools, and you go to the decay, which is how long like a reverb is, you can literally set it to infinite. It will never ever stop reverbing. It'll just keep looping over itself. What does it do when it loops the reverb over itself just from a sine wave? It creates harmonics. I can kind of show you a little bit here if I just solo the sine wave sums here. So this is my sine wave right here. It's got, this infinite reverb just kind of like pulsing it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then eventually we will get to a point later on where you see like this C sharp is holding pretty steady. Then this D sharp comes in a little later. And it starts making all of these harmonics. And I added some dynamic EQ to kind of like pulse it a little bit. That's what this guy's doing right here. And you can hear it pulsing. So what that does is it adds this kind of like this pulsing low end vibration to my chorus effect here. And it doesn't really matter too much until the song progresses more and more and more and more and more to the end. Then you have all these harmonics building on top of each other because once again, it's infinitely going, right? And it's just causing a lot of feedback within itself, and it gets a little crazy. So I had to control the feedback by essentially throwing a multi-band compressor on here and taming all that low end so that if it gets to a certain point, it's going to squish it back down so it doesn't just get infinitely louder and louder and louder and drown everything else out. Just basic audio engineering 101 right there, just controlling your signal, right? I feel like I've talked about the low end of this for far too long. Let's get to some more like interesting stuff here. Um, I did some percussive elements here. I'm not going to go too much into it. Essentially, I just recorded a bunch of different samples of, well, I didn't record. I used a bunch of different samples in Sketch of these different like kick drums, like and some bongos. And threw those in wherever I felt like I wanted them. I wanted it to kind of give the effect of like there's an army marching towards you and they're like banging on their war drums. There's a lot going on with the percussive element here. I don't really want to go too much into it because I really want to talk about the Mongolian throat singing. Yes, you heard me right. Mongolian throat singing. I don't know how to throat sing. I think it sounds really cool. So what I did is I went to YouTube and I just looked up Mongolian throat singing and spent way too long finding the perfect video that I could just like sample the throat singing into, threw it into Pro Tools, processed the absolute hell out of it, and did a bunch of crazy stuff to end up with something that sounds like this. Of course, I gave it a really, really long reverb tail as well. And I had to essentially chop up this video, pick certain parts that sounded good. There's even this one little part right here where in the video, there's like a bunch of different people chanting. There's a bunch of different people doing this like throat singing, and it's causing weird harmonics and distortions on top of themselves. So I think it's in this section here. Let me show you what I mean. Yeah, right around there, it started making like this really high-pitched harmonic, and I tamed it a little bit with this like dynamic EQ over here, but I thought it added like a whole different element to the throat singing. It added like depth, it added variety to it, kind of randomness to it. There's a lot that went into processing this. I'm like saturating it a bunch. I'm adding distortion to it. I'm compressing the absolute hell out of it. I'm sidechaining it to everything else essentially. I'm sidechaining the reverb for it somewhere here. Let me see. Yeah, I'm sidechaining the reverb of my drums because the reverb tail on my drums is so long that I want the reverb of the drums to punch through other elements of the song, of this like cinematic scape. I did some really, really crazy Frankenstein stuff to this. And if any of you guys are interested, I can make a separate video going into like every detailed element of what I did to this mix, because ultimately it's magic what I did. I'm not going to lie to you. It's signal processing magic what I did here. There's a lot of just fuck around and find out. It's a lot, right? The last thing I want to kind of go into is I did some vocal processing, and I could show you the actual processing that I did for the voice acting part of here, where I actually recorded into my microphone into Pro Tools with like a whole processing unit and mixed that separately. But this video is already long enough, and I'm sure you guys just want to hear ultimately what's going on with this. So I took the finished product of that vocal processing. Let me play it here for you, actually.
Centuries ago, my vow was such. My curse has saturated these foul realms in my unquestioned authority.
So I wanted him to sound monstrous, obviously. There's a lot I did to kind of get like that grit and growl in there, as well as just manipulating my own vocal cords to get that growl in the first place. But If you've ever seen Full Metal Alchemist, there's a character on Full Metal Alchemist named Al. He's essentially a disembodied voice inside of a suit of armor. And the sound design of Al was always something that I found fascinating, even before I got got into audio and music in general. And I wanted to know how they did that. So I basically put like 2 reverb plugins together, caused them to feed back, and then EQ'd that feedback to kind of give like the sound that his voice is echoing and pinging off of like his armor, his helmet, right? So I took that whole final product and I wanted to kind of sit it inside of this cinematic piece in a really specific way. I wanted to add more elements to his voice that Archeon has slain millions of people. He's like bathed in the blood of his enemies for centuries, for eons, right? He has probably a lot of different like souls that he keeps with him that just like fuel his power. And I wanted to give this kind of idea that there's whispers all around him. He has this aura of like these spirits of slain enemies that are haunting him forever. So I added a reverse reverb here. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, spooky verb here. This is basically just a reverse reverb. So what it's doing essentially is just sending the signal through here, and it's like adding a reverse like reverb on the tail end of it. Like it takes what you said, reverses it, and adds it to the end. It wasn't good enough though. It didn't sound like great enough on its own. Let me kind of show you what that sounds like just by itself without anything else here. Sounds something like this.
Centuries ago, Marvel was such.
So it sounds something like that. It has like these like echoing reverb on like the back of him. But I wanted it to be like even spookier. I wanted it to be like even scarier. So I added this whole other layer here, which all I did was just copy this little I copied like this little chunk of his dialogue, pasted it down here, and then I just rendered another reverse reverb, a different reverse reverb, on top of it. I set it at like it was like a 3-second decay. Sometimes I went up to like 6 seconds. I just kind of played around with this knob a little bit. Rendered in front of it. So as you can see, this starts right before his line here. So I just dragged that out, rendered some reverse reverb on top of it so that the tail end of his reverb will come at the front of his dialogue, kind of blending in together with what we have here.
Centuries ago, Marvel was such.
So it's adding like these other like ghostly ethereal voices on top of his. So that's essentially it. And if you guys want to check out that little piece right here with the dialogue in it, I'll play it right at the end of this video. And if you want to just listen to the music with no dialogue, just, you know, use it for your own D&D campaigns, use it for your own inspiration, use it for whatever, I'll be posting a separate YouTube video on this channel with it. And feel free to download it, feel free to put it on a playlist, do whatever you want with it. It's free. Just use it. The only thing that I ask moving forward when I release music is you can use it for whatever you want, but please give me credit. So if somebody asks you, where did you get this audio sample? Where did you get this audio file? Or who made this? Just mention my name, mention my YouTube channel. Enjoy my art. That's all I want. Just, if you like it, enjoy it. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll be making some more videos in the future here with some more projects that I have going on that I'm just doing the final touches on. Take care, everyone, and be nice to yourself, or else.